The top cop who put his badge on the line for justice.
The gripping story of Deputy Sheriff Doug Poppa. He was a top cop who did the right thing and paid dearly for it.
You know the name Doug Poppa?
Yes, I do. God bless Doug Poppa, an honest cop.
He was a man of integrity. His testimony last summer freed an innocent man from jail who had already been convicted of shooting his ex-wife. But Poppa's going public cost him his job as an undercover cop.
I was elated, of course, but then as he testified, I was somewhat concerned for him because I knew that they were probably going to crucify that man.
Doug Poppa was targeted for a 10-day suspension by his own department for defying superiors and talking to the media. This Brooklyn-born street fighter wouldn't back down.
Sometimes the truth has a price. That may be the lesson of a Virginia police officer who says in trying to do the right thing, he ended up paying for it.
The message you're sending is, see, we did it, Doug. You don't come out, you don't buck the system. No matter what the reason is, you just can basically keep your mouth shut. But if I wouldn't do it all over again, I would take the badge and I would leave it on somebody's desk and get out of police work. Because the day I can't tell the truth because somebody's pressuring me, and the day the system doesn't want me to tell the truth because somebody's pressuring me, is the day I leave the badge on the desk and walk away.
Poppa was fired for insubordination. One man who confronted truth and consequences.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 133 of the Doug Poppa podcast, formerly called Truth and Consequences with Doug Poppa. So I've shortened the title. Everything else remains the same, the YouTube channel. So contact information has been changed also. If you want to get in touch with me, it's dougpoppapodcast@gmail.com. And again, the title of the podcast from now on will be the Doug Poppa podcast. This is episode 133 for Friday, January 6th, 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, everybody's up on the Idaho murders. The 4 college students, Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Concalves, Zana Konodal, and Madison Mogan. And you know, the suspect in that case, Brian Koberger, was arrested. And yesterday, the police released the redacted affidavit of probable cause. So a lot of the news agencies have been talking about excerpts that's in that, but it's pretty interesting. So I'm going to read the entire exhibit that was released. And there, like I said, there's some redactions on it, and I'll let you know as I'm reading it where the redactions are. Those are the 4 kids from college that were murdered. It's very sad. It's about an 18-page affidavit. Get it up on the screen here. You can go back and pull it. It's available online in certain places. You can get the full affidavit, but I'll run it across the screen here. It's looped, so you can, if you want to go back and follow it and make copies through the photo, you can snap photos of the screenshots and stuff. So before I get into this podcast, in episode 131, I broke the story that on September 14th, 2022, a 74-year-old woman was murdered. She was by her son. She was stabbed 68 times. And Las Vegas Metro police officers who were on scene heard her screams and were told to stand down by their sergeant until SWAT arrived. And when they went in the apartment, when the suspect came out prior to the arrival of SWAT, they went in and they found her body. And I'll have the link to that podcast. I have some updated information that I'll talk about in a future podcast because this podcast may be a little lengthy. I'm going to read the entire exhibit as I have it that was released by the police. And I have some updates on some other podcasts that I did last year, and we'll get those out in upcoming episodes. And also I got a lot more coming out on the unsolved murders, the 2016 Las Vegas double homicide of Sidney Land and Nehemiah Kaufman. Over 6 years unsolved. The investigation by the police was horrible. It was horrendous. They did a few good things, but they did many things that were wrong. And we'll be going back to the beginning and doing a little podcast starting before the murders with new information that I obtained. And like I said, I've been on this case for several years. And as I stated in a previous podcast, Connie Land, who is the mother of Sidney Land, one of the victims in that case, she took her own life in August of last year. I've been working with Connie for years, since 2019. So we got a lot of stuff coming out this year, and also some other stories that I'm working on with other police departments, including more information on the Las Vegas Metro Police. So let's get with it on this thing here. Okay, it reads Exhibit A, Statement of Brett Payne, Payne. The below information is provided by Brett Payne, who is a duly appointed, qualified, and acting peace officer within the county of, and I'm pronouncing it right, Latah, Latah, state of Idaho. Brett Payne is employed by Moscow Police Department in the official capacity or position of corporal, and has been a trained and qualified peace officer for approximately 4 years. Corporal Payne is being assisted by members of the Idaho State Police and agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. On November 13, 2022, at approximately 4:00 p.m., Moscow Police Department Sergeant Blaker, Blaker, and I responded to 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho, hereafter the King Road residence, to assist with scene security and processing of a crime scene associated with 4 homicides. Upon arrival, the Idaho State Police forensic team was on scene and was preparing to begin processing the scene. Moscow PD Officer Smith, one of the initial responding officers to the incident, advised he would walk me through the scene. Officer Smith and I entered the King Road residence through the bottom floor door on the north side of the building. Officer Smith and I then walked upstairs to the second floor. Officer Smith directed me down the hallway to the west bedroom on the second floor, which I later learned, through Xana's driver's license and other personal belongings found in the room, was Xana Kernodle, hereafter Kernodle, room. Just before this room, there was a bathroom door on the south wall of the hallway. As I approached the room, I could see a body, later identified as Kernodle's, lying on the floor. Kernodle was deceased with wounds which appeared to have been caused by an edged weapon. Also in the room was a male, later identified as Ethan Chapin, hereafter Chapin. Chapin was also deceased with wounds later determined. Autopsy report provided by Spokane County Medical Examiner, redacted, dated December 15th, 2022, to be caused by, quote, sharp force injuries. I then followed Officer Smith upstairs to the third floor of the residence. The third floor consisted of 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The bedroom on the west side of the floor was later determined to be Kaylee Concalvis, hereafter Concalvis's room. I later learned, from review of Officer Nunes's body camera, there was a dog in the room when Moscow police officers initially responded. The dog belonged to Concalvis and her boyfriend Jack Ducour, Ducoeur. I found out from my interview with Jack Ducour on November 13, 2022, that he and Concalvis shared the dog. Officer Smith then pointed out a small bedroom on the east side of the third floor. The bathroom shared a wall with Madison Mogan's, hereafter Mogan's bedroom, which was situated on the southeast corner of the third floor. As I entered this bedroom, I could see 2 females in the single bed in the room. Both Concalvis and Mogan were deceased with visible stab wounds. I also later noticed what appeared to be a tan leather knife sheath laying on the bed next to Mogan's right side, when viewed from the door. The sheath was later processed and had quote-unquote K-Bar USMC and the United States Marine Corps Eagle Globe and Anchor insignia stamped on the outside of it. the Idaho State Lab later located a single source of male DNA suspect profile left on the button snap of the knife sheath. As part of the investigation, numerous interviews were conducted by Moscow Police Department officers, Idaho State Police detectives, and FBI agents. Two of the interviews included BF and DM. Both BF and DM were inside the King Road residence at the time of the homicides and were roommates to the victims. BF's bedroom was located on the east side of the first floor of the King Road residence. Based on numerous interviews conducted by Moscow PD officers, Idaho State Police detectives, and FBI agents, as well as my review of evidence, I have learned the following. On the evening of November 12, 2022, Chapin and Kernodle are seen by BF at the Sigma Chi house on the University of Idaho campus at 735 Nez Perce Drive from approximately 9 o'clock p.m. on November 12th to 1:45 a.m. on November 13th. BF also estimated that at approximately 1:45 a.m., Chapin and Kernodle returned to the King Road residence. BF also stated that Chapin did not live in the King Road residence but was a guest of Kernodle. Concalves and Mogan were at a local bar, the Corner Club, at 202 North Main Street in Moscow. Concalves and Mogan can be seen on video footage provided by the Corner Club between 10 o'clock p.m. on November 12th and 1:30 a.m. on November 13th. At approximately 1:30 a.m., Concalves and Mogan can be seen on video at a local food vendor called the Grub Truck at 318 South Main Street in downtown Moscow. The Grub Truck live streams video from their food truck on the streaming platform Twitch, which is available for public viewing on their website. This video was captured by law enforcement. A private party, redacted, reported that he provided a ride to Concalves and Mogan at approximately 1:56 a.m. from downtown Moscow in front of the Grub Truck to the King Road residence. DM and BF both made statements during interviews that indicated the occupants of the King Road residence were at home by 2 o'clock a.m. and asleep, or at least in their rooms, by approximately 4 o'clock a.m. This is with the exception of Kernodle, who received a DoorDash order at the residence at approximately 4 o'clock a.m. Law enforcement identified the DoorDash delivery driver who reported this information. DM stated she originally went to sleep in her bedroom on the southeast side of the second floor. DM stated she was awoken at approximately 4 o'clock a.m., by which she stated sounded like Concalves playing with her dog in one of the upstairs bedrooms, which were located on the third floor. A short time later, DM said she heard who she thought was Concalves saying something to the effect of, quote, "There's someone here," unquote. A review of records obtained from a forensic download of Kernodle's phone showed this could also have been Kernodle, as her cellular phone indicated she was likely awake and using the TikTok app at approximately 4:12 a.m. DM stated she looked out of her bedroom but did not see anything when she heard the comment about someone being in the house. DM stated she opened her door a second time when she heard what she thought was crying coming from Kernodle's room. DM then said she heard a male voice say something to the effect of, quote, "It's okay, I'm going to help you," unquote. At approximately 4:17 a.m., a security camera located 1112 King Road, a residence immediately to the northwest of 1122 King Road, picked up distorted audio of what sounded like voices or a whimper, followed by a loud thud. A dog can be heard barking numerous times starting at 4:17 a.m. The security camera is less than 50 feet from the west wall of Kernodle's bedroom. DM stated she opened her door for the third time after she heard the crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. DM described the figure as 5 foot 10 inches or taller, male, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. The male walked past DM as she stood in a, quote, frozen shock phase, unquote. The male walked toward the back sliding glass door. DM locked herself in her room after seeing the male. DM did not state that she recognized the male. This leads investigators to believe that the murderer left the scene. The combination of DM's statements to law enforcement, reviews of forensic downloads of records from BF and DM's phone, and video of a suspect video, as described below, leads investigators to believe the homicides occurred between 4 o'clock a.m. and 4:25 a.m. During the processing of the crime scene, investigators found a latent shoe print. This was located during the second processing of the crime scene by the Idaho State Police forensic team by first using a presumptive blood test and then amino black, a protein stain that detects the presence of cellular material. The detected shoe print showed a diamond-shaped pattern similar to the pattern of a Vans-type shoe sole, that's V-A-N-S, just outside the door of DM's bedroom, located on the second floor. This is consistent with DM's statement regarding the suspect's path of travel. As part of the investigation, an extensive search, commonly referred to in law enforcement as a, quote, video canvas, unquote, was conducted in the area of the King Road residence. This video canvas was to obtain any footage from the early morning hours of November 13, 2022, in the area of the King Road residence and surrounding neighborhoods in an effort to locate the suspects, or suspects' vehicles traveling to or leaving from the King Road residence. This video canvas resulted in the collection of numerous surveillance videos in the area from both residential and business addresses. I have reviewed numerous videos that were collected and have had conversations with other Moscow police officers, Idaho State Police detectives, and FBI agents that are similarly reviewing footage that was obtained. A review of the camera footage indicated that a white sedan, hereafter, quote, suspect vehicle 1, unquote, was observed traveling westbound in the 700 block of Indian Hills Drive in Moscow at approximately 3:26 a.m. and westbound on Steiner Avenue at Idaho State Highway 95 in Moscow at approximately 3:28 a.m. On this video, it appeared suspect vehicle 1 was not displaying a front license plate. A review of footage from multiple videos obtained from the King Road neighborhood showed multiple sightings of suspect vehicle, starting at 3:29 a.m. and ending at 4:20 a.m. The sightings show suspect vehicle 1 makes an initial 3 passes by the 1122 King Road residence and then leave via Walenta Drive. Based off of my experience as a patrol officer, this is a residential neighborhood with a very limited number of vehicles that travel in the area during the early morning hours. Upon review of the video, there are only a few cars that enter and exit this area during the time frame. Suspect vehicle 1 can be seen entering the area a fourth time at approximately 4:04 a.m. It can be seen driving eastbound on King Road, stopping and turning around in front of 500 Queen Road number 52, and then driving back westbound on King Road. When suspect vehicles in front of the King Road residence, it appeared to unsuccessfully attempt to park or turn around in the road. The vehicle then continued to the intersection of Queen Road and King Road, where it can be seen completing a three-point turn, and then driving eastbound again down Queen Road. Suspect vehicle 1 is next seen departing the area of the King Road residence at approximately 4:20 a.m. at a high rate of speed. Suspect Vehicle 1 is next observed traveling southbound on Walinta Drive. Based on my knowledge of the area and review of camera footage in the neighborhood, that does not show Suspect Vehicle 1 during that time frame. I believe that Suspect Vehicle 1 likely exited the neighborhood of Palouse River Drive and Conestoga Drive. Palouse River Drive is at the southern edge of Moscow and proceeds into Whitman County, Washington. Eventually, the road leads to Pullman, Washington. Pullman, Washington is approximately 10 miles from Moscow, Idaho. Both Pullman and Moscow are small college towns, and people commonly travel back and forth between them. Law enforcement officers provided video footage of Suspect Vehicle 1 to forensic examiners with the Federal Bureau of Investigation that regularly utilize surveillance footage to identify the year, make, and model of an unknown vehicle that is observed by one or more cameras during the commission of a criminal offense. The forensic examiner has approximately 35 years law enforcement experience with 12 years at the FBI. His specific training includes identifying unique characteristics of vehicles, and he uses a database that gives visual clues of vehicles across states to identify differences between vehicles. After reviewing the numerous observations of Suspect Vehicle 1, the forensic examiner initially believed that Suspect Vehicle 1 was a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. Upon further review, he indicated it could also be a 2011 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. As a result, investigators have been reviewing information on persons in possession of a vehicle that is a 2011 to 2016 white Hyundai Elantra. Investigators were given access to video footage on the Washington State University campus located in Pullman, Washington. A review of that video indicated that at approximately 2:44 a.m. on November 13, 2022, a white sedan, which was consistent with the description of the white Elantra known as Suspect Vehicle 1, was observed on Washington State University surveillance cameras traveling north on Southeast Nevada Street at Northeast Stadium Way. At approximately 2:53 a.m., a white sedan, which is consistent with the description of the white Elantra known as Suspect Vehicle 1, was observed traveling southeast on Nevada Street in Pullman, Washington, towards SR 270. State Road 270 connects Pullman, Washington to Moscow, Idaho. This camera footage from Pullman, Washington was provided to the same FBI forensic examiner. The forensic examiner identified the vehicle observed in Pullman, Washington as being a 2014 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. At approximately 5:25 a.m., a white sedan, which was consistent with the description of Suspect Vehicle 1, was observed on 5 cameras in Pullman, Washington, and on Washington State University campus cameras. The first camera that recorded the white sedan was located at 1300 Johnson Road in Pullman. The white sedan was observed traveling northbound on Johnson Road. Johnson Road leads directly back to West Palouse River Drive in Moscow, which intersects with Conestoga Drive. The white sedan was then observed turning north on Bishop Boulevard and northwest on State Road 270. At approximately 5:27 a.m., the white Elantra was observed on cameras traveling northbound on Stadium Way at Nevada Street, Stadium Way at Grimes Way, Stadium Drive at Wilson Road, and Stadium Way at Cougar Way. And they have a description, a little description photo here that's hard to see in the affidavit. You can go back and look at the affidavit on the screenshots that I provided earlier. And it says on that thing, it says depiction showing the white Elantra's path of travel, not the scale. And then they have a bigger one on the next page. On November 25th, 2022, Moscow PD asked area law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for white Hyundai Elantras in the area. On November 29, 2022, at approximately 12:28 a.m., Washington State University police officer Daniel Tiengo, Tiengo, queried white Elantras registered at Washington State University. As a result of that query, he located a 2015 white Elantra with a Pennsylvania license plate Lincoln Frank Zebra 8649, LFZ 8649. This vehicle was registered to Brian Koberger, hereafter Koberger, residing at 1630 Northeast Valley Road, apartment 201, Pullman, Washington. 1630 Northeast Valley Road is approximately 3/4 of a mile from the intersection of Stadium Way and Cougar Way, the last camera location that picked up the white Elantra. The same day at approximately 12:58 a.m., Washington State University officer Curtis Whitman was looking for white Hyundai Elantras and located a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra at 1630 Northeast Valley Road in Pullman in the parking lot. 1630 Northeast Valley Road is an apartment complex that houses Washington State University students. Officer Whitman also ran the car and it returned to Koberger with a Washington tag. I reviewed Koberger's Washington State driver's license information and photograph. This license indicates that Koberger is a white male with a height of 6 feet and weighs 185 pounds. Additionally, the photograph of Koberger shows that he has bushy eyebrows. Koberger's physical description is consistent with the description of the male DM saw inside the King Road residence on November 13th. Further investigation, including a review of Latta County Sheriff's Deputy Corporal Duke's body cam and reports, showed that on August 21, 2022, Brian Koberger was detained as part of a traffic stop that occurred in Moscow, Idaho by Corporal Duke. At the time, Koberger, who was the sole occupant, was driving a white 2015 Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plate Lincoln Frank Zebra 8649, which was set to expire November 30th, 2022. But during the stop, which was recorded via a law enforcement body camera, Koberger provided his phone number as redacted 8458. Hereafter, the 8458 phone, quote unquote, as his cellular telephone number. Investigators conducted electronic database queries and learned that the 8458 phone is a number issued by AT&T. On October 14, 2022, Brian Koberger was detained as part of a traffic stop by a Washington State University police officer. Upon review of that body cam and report of the stop, Koberger was the sole occupant and was driving a white 2015 Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plate Lincoln Frank Zebra 8649. On November 18, 2022, according to Washington State Licensing, Koberger registered the 2015 white Elantra with Washington and later received Washington plate Charlie Frank Baker 8708. Prior to this time, the 2015 white Elantra was registered in Pennsylvania, which does not require a front license plate to be displayed. This was learned through communications with the Pennsylvania officer who is currently certified in the state of Pennsylvania. Based on my own experience and communication with Washington law enforcement, I know that Idaho and Washington require front and back license plates to be displayed. Investigators believe that Koberger is still driving the 2015 white Elantra because his vehicle was captured on December 13, 2022 by a license plate reader in Loma, Colorado, information provided by a query to a database. Koberger's Elantra was then queried on December 15, 2022 by law enforcement in Hancock County, Indiana. On December 16, 2022, at approximately 2:26 p.m., surveillance video showed Koberger's Elantra in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. The sole occupant of the vehicle was a white male whose description was consistent with Koberger. Koberger has family in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, learned through a TLO search and locate tool database query. Based on information provided by the Washington State University website, Kohlberger is currently a PhD student in criminology at Washington State University. Pursuant to records provided by a member of the interview panel for Pullman Police Department, we learned that Kohlberger's past education included undergraduate degrees in psychology and cloud-based forensics. These records also showed Kohlberger wrote an essay when he applied for internship with the Pullman Police Department in the fall of 2022. Kohlberger wrote in his essay he had interest in assisting rural law enforcement agencies with how to better collect and analyze technological data in public safety operations. Kohlberger also posted a Reddit survey, which can be found by an open-source internet search. The survey asks for participants to provide information to, quote, understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime, unquote. As part of this investigation, law enforcement obtained search warrants to determine cellular devices that utilize cellular towers in close proximity to the King Road residence on November 13, 2022, between 3 o'clock a.m. and 5 o'clock a.m. After determining that Kohlberger was associated to both the 2015 white Elantra and the 8458 phone, investigators reviewed these search warrant returns. A query of the 8458 phone in these returns did not show the 8458 phone utilizing cellular tower resources in close proximity to the King Road residence between 3 o'clock a.m. and 5 o'clock a.m. Based on my training, experience, and conversations with law enforcement officers that specialize in the utilization of cellular telephone records as part of investigations, individuals can either leave their cellular telephone at a different location before committing a crime or turn their cellular telephone off prior to going to a location to commit a crime. This is done by subjects in an effort to avoid alerting law enforcement that a cellular device associated with them was in a particular area where a crime is committed. I also know that on numerous occasions, subjects will surveil an area where they intend to commit a crime prior to the date of the crime. Depending on the circumstances, this could be done a few days before or for several months prior to the commission of a crime. During these types of surveillance, it is possible that an individual would not leave their cellular telephone at a separate location or turn it off since they do not plan to commit the offense on that particular day. On December 23, 2022, I applied for and was granted a search warrant for historical phone records between November 12, 2022 at 12 o'clock a.m. and November 14th at 12 o'clock a.m. for the 8458 phone held by the phone provider AT&T, approximately 24 hours preceding and following the times of the homicides. Time for a water break here, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, these investigators are complex, and it's not like on television where they solve a crime in a half hour or an hour. Okay, let's continue with what's in the affidavit. On December 23, 2022, pursuant to that search warrant, I received records for the 8458 phone from AT&T. These records indicated that the 8458 phone is subscribed to Brian Kohlberger at an address in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, and the account has been open since June 23, 2022. These records also included historical cell site location information, CSLI, for the 8458 phone. After receiving this information, I consulted with an FBI special agent that is certified as a member of the Cellular Analysis Survey Team, CAST. Members of the CAST are certified with the FBI to provide expert testimony in the field of historical CSLI and are required to pass extensive training that includes both written and practical examinations prior to be certified with CAST, as well as the completion of yearly certification requirements. Additionally, the FBI CAST special agent that I consulted with has over 15 years of federal law enforcement experience, which includes 6 years with the FBI. From information provided by CAST, I was able to determine estimated locations for the 8458 phone from November 12, 2022 to November 13, 2022, the time period authorized by the court. On November 13, 2022, at approximately 2:42 a.m., the 8458 phone was utilizing utilizing cellular resources that provide coverage to 1630 Northeast Valley Road, apartment G201, Pullman, Washington, hereafter the quote Koberger residence. At approximately 2:47 a.m., the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that provided coverage southeast of the Koberger residence, consistent with the 8458 phone leaving the Koberger residence and traveling south through Pullman, Washington. This is consistent with the movement of the White Elantra. At approximately 2:47 a.m., the 8458 phone stops reporting to the network, which is consistent with either the phone being in an area without cellular coverage, the connection to the network is disabled, such as putting the phone in airplane mode, or that the phone is turned off. The 8458 phone does not report to the network again until approximately 4:48 a.m., at which time it utilized cellular resources that provide coverage to Idaho State Highway 95 south of Moscow, Idaho, near Blaine, Idaho, north of Genesee. Between 4:50 a.m. and 5:26 a.m., the phone utilizes cellular resources that are consistent with the 8458 phone traveling south on Idaho State Highway 95 to Genesee, Idaho, then traveling west towards Uniontown, Idaho, and then north back to Pullman, Washington. At approximately 5:30 a.m., the 8458 phone is utilizing resources that provide coverage to Pullman, Washington, and consistent with the phone traveling back to the Koberger residence. The 8458 phone's movements are consistent with the movements of the White Elantra that is observed traveling north on Stadium Drive at approximately 5:27 a.m. Based on a review of the 8458 phone's estimated locations and travel, the 8458 phone's travel is consistent with that of the White Elantra. Further review indicated that the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources on November 13, 2022 that are consistent with the 8458 phone leaving the area of the Koberger residence at approximately 9 o'clock a.m. and traveling to Moscow, Idaho. Specifically, the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage to the King Road residence between 9:12 a.m. and 9:21 a.m. The 8458 phone next utilized cellular resources that are consistent with the 8458 phone traveling back to the area of the Koberger residence and arriving to the area at approximately 9:32 a.m. Below is a depiction, not to scale, of the possible route taken based off of the cellular locations. And then they have a screenshot. You'll see it on the, if you go back and look at the affidavits, put that back up on the screen. Investigators found that the 8458 phone did not connect to a cell phone tower that provides service to Moscow on November 14, 2022. But investigators do not believe the 8458 phone was in Moscow on that date. The 8458 phone has not connected to any towers that provide service to Moscow since that date. Based on my training, experience, and the facts of the investigation thus far, I believe that Koberger, the user of the 8458 phone, was likely the driver of the White Elantra that is observed departing Pullman, Washington, and that this vehicle is likely suspect vehicle 1. Additionally, the route of travel of the 8458 phone during the early morning hours of November 13, 2022, and the lack of the 8458 phone reporting to AT&T between 2:47 and 4:48 a.m. is consistent with Koberger attempting to conceal his location during the quadruple homicide that occurred at the King Road residence. On December 23, 2022, I was granted a search warrant for Koberger's historical CSLI, the cellular data, from June 23, 2022 to current prospective location information and a pen register, trap, and trace on the 8458 phone to aid in efforts to determine if Koberger stalked any of the victims, in this case, prior to the offense, conducted surveillance on the King Road residence, was in contact with any of the victims' associates before and after the alleged offense, any locations that may contain evidence of the murders that occurred on November 13, 2022, the location of the white Elantra registered to Koberger, as well as the location of Koberger. And my interject something here for you, ladies and gentlemen, you don't know. Pen register trap, also the dialed number recorder, gives you the telephone numbers of the numbers you dial out from a phone, and the trap and trace would show telephone numbers coming into the phone. At least that's the way it was 30 years ago when I was an investigator on the sheriff's office. Anyway, continuing on with the affidavit. On December 23, 2022, pursuant to that search warrant, I received historical records for the 8458 phone from AT&T from the time the account was opened in June 2022. After consulting with CST Special Agent, the FBI agent who specializes in the cellular data, I was able to determine estimated locations for the 8458 phone from June 2022 to present, the time period authorized by the court. The records for the 8458 phone show that 8458 phone utilizing cellular resources that provide coverage to the area of 1122 King Road on at least 12 occasions prior to November 13, 2022. All of these occasions, except for one, occurred in the late evening and early morning hours of their respective days. One of these occasions, on August 21, 2022, the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources providing coverage to the King Road residence from approximately 10:34 p.m. to 11:35 p.m. At approximately 11:37 p.m., Koberger was stopped by Latah County Sheriff's Deputy Corporal Duke, as mentioned above. The 8458 phone was utilizing cellular resources consistent with the location of the traffic stop during this time, Farm Road and Pullman Highway. Further analysis of the cellular data provided showed the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources on November 13, 2022, consistent with the phone traveling from Pullman, Washington to Lewiston, Idaho, via U.S. Highway 195. At approximately 12:36 p.m., the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage to Kate's Cup of Joe coffee stand, to Kate's Cup of Joe coffee stand located at 810 Post Drive, Clarkston, Washington. Surveillance footage from the U.S. Chef Store located at 820 Port Drive, Clarkston, Washington, and adjacent to Kate's Cup of Joe showed a white Elantra consistent with Suspect 1 drive past Kate's Cup of Joe at a time consistent with the cellular data from the 8458 phone. At approximately 12:46 p.m., the 8458 phone then utilized cellular data in the area of Albertson's grocery store at 400 Bridge Street in Clarkston, Washington. Surveillance footage obtained from the Albertsons showed Koberger exit the white Elantra consistent with suspect vehicle 1 at approximately 12:49 p.m. Interior surveillance cameras showed Koberger walk through the store, purchase unknown items at the checkout, and leave at approximately 1:04 p.m., Kohlberger's possible path of travel is depicted below, not to scale. And then they have the diagram they have in there. Additional analysis of records for the 8458 phone indicated that between approximately 5:32 p.m. and 5:36 p.m., the 8458 phone utilized cellular resources that provide coverage to Johnson, Idaho. The 8458 phone then stops reporting to the network from approximately 5:36 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. That is consistent with the 8458 phone being the area that the 8458 phone traveled in the hours immediately following the suspected time the homicides occurred. Let me interject something here. Ladies and gentlemen, you could see from this affidavit, and this is a redacted affidavit, but you could see the extensive investigative work that went into this. So very extensive surveillance coverage, different cameras, travel routes obtained by cellular information, and this is what criminal investigations are all about, not like what you see on television. Again, let's continue here. On December 27, 2022, Pennsylvania agents recovered the trash from the Kohlberger family residence located in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. That evidence was sent to the Idaho State Lab for testing. On December 28, 2022, the Idaho State Lab reported that a DNA profile obtained from the trash and the DNA profile obtained from the knife sheath identified a male as not being excluded as to the biological father of suspect profile. At least 99.9998% of the male population would be expected to be excluded from the possibility of being the suspect's biological father. So they identified the DNA through the suspect's Kohlberger's biological father, at this time not from Kohlberger, which I'm sure once he was arrested and they got his DNA, they're going to put it on, do the match and everything they have. So anyway, I'll say something in the closing comments. I want to continue here. We're almost finished. Let me read that again here because people get confused with DNA. On December 27, 2022, Pennsylvania agents recovered the trash from the Kohlberger family residence located in Albright, Pennsylvania. Let me interject something. That is standard investigative, depending on what kind of investigation you do. We used to do that all the time when I was a criminal investigator. We called them trash runs. And as long as it wasn't on personal property, it was up at the curb, we used to take the trash, and then you go through it, and you could find evidence of drugs or whatever you're looking for. So that's what he's talking about over here. So let me go back again and read that one more time. On December 27, 2022, Pennsylvania agents recovered the trash from the Kohlberger family residence located in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. That evidence was sent to the Idaho State Lab for testing. On December 28, 2022, the Idaho State Lab reported that a DNA profile obtained from the trash and the DNA profile obtained from the knife sheath identified a male as not being excluded as the biological father of suspect profile. At least 99.998% of the male population will be expected to be excluded from the possibility of being the suspect's biological father. So from the DNA that they obtained from the trash, that's how they got into the son's DNA, through the match anyway. That's a simple way of putting it. But once he was arrested, they'll actually have his actual DNA, and then they'll match that with the items that they need to make the case. In short, that's what that says. Okay, we're almost done here. Based on the above information, I'm requesting an arrest warrant be issued for Brian C. Kohlberger, date of birth November 21st, 1994, for burglary at 1122 King Street in Moscow, Idaho, and 4 counts of murder in the first degree for the murders of Madison Mogan, Kaylee Concalves, Zana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. I declare under penalty of perjury, pursuant to the law of the state of Idaho, that the foregoing is true and correct. Signed, number 157, badge number December 29th, 2022. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the entire report as read less the redactions that I stated. And I got to say something on this. This was a phenomenal criminal investigation by Idaho State Police, the Moscow police officers, the FBI, all these agencies that were involved. There was a lot of criticism. You heard on the news. Now, I do work now as a former law enforcement officer, but I do work now as an independent journalist. But I see things from both sides. As a journalist, you want to know everything about a crime when it occurs. And from the police side, I say they shouldn't release nothing. So thumbs up, great job to the chief of Moscow and all the investigators here, because there were no leaks during this investigation. They didn't release anything, which is the way a criminal investigation is supposed to be conducted. And as some of you who follow me, you know, when I was writing for the Baltimore Post-Examiner, and then I continued on in my podcast, I started looking into the Land Kaufman murders, the unsolved murders of Sidney Land and Nehemiah Kaufman that occurred in October of 2016. And I have more stuff coming out. That case was a freaking disgrace as far as a double homicide investigation. They did a lot of things they shouldn't have done. Everybody was talking to everybody about aspects of the case. They went on television in an open murder case, and they talked about the suspect and DNA evidence and saw this DNA. It's a freaking disgrace, and I'm going to have more coming up on that. This case here, from a former police officer, a law enforcement officer's point of view, was handled the way you should do an investigation. Keep your freaking mouth shut. You don't tell the press anything until there's an arrest made, and then you tell them limited stuff because you do not want to destroy the prosecution of the case. This was a textbook way of investigation should be handled. And again, unlike I live in Las Vegas, so I follow up on a lot of stuff in Vegas. You know, I did 165 stories on the Las Vegas Massacre, the October 2017 Las Vegas Massacre. And also that case, we had police personnel, including command staff officers, who were releasing stuff to the press, photographs of Paddock's body, the firearms, and that investigation. I'll have an upcoming podcast on that because I got more information on that. That internal investigation, when they're trying to find out what police personnel leaked those crime scene photos to the press, the rifles and Paddock's body, it was shut down by Sheriff Lombardo. And I say Sheriff Lombardo because the current sheriff now, who was the undersheriff, Kevin McMahill, they were all part of this. That investigation, the internal affairs investigation, was shut down, according to my police sources, because it was getting close. They cleared line-level officers, including the officers who went in the room and did the breach, and it was starting to point to captains. And I have more information on that. I'll be talking about that in a future podcast. Point being is this, ladies and gentlemen, okay? When they're doing a criminal investigation, especially on a homicide case like this, journalists, and I do work now as an independent investigative journalist, you always want answers from the police. And when you don't get them, they don't have to tell you nothing, especially about a homicide. This case was just, like I said, I followed it from the start. I didn't want to do any podcast on it because there were all these so-called experts out there giving their opinions on who did the murders, and I think this, I think that. You know, it's all supposition. It's all their opinions and stuff. But they did a great job. You keep your mouth shut, not like who's now the governor, Joe Lombardo, running his mouth every day during the massacre and putting out bad information, false information, and just, which spawned a lot of conspiracy theories. It's not the job of the police to destroy a criminal investigation. It's to protect it. And this investigation from the Moscow Police Department, the Idaho State Police, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation was out freaking standing. And this, what I just read, ladies and gentlemen, this is just the beginning of their investigation. And you can see how in-depth it was. Cellular phone records, that's all very technical stuff. Pen registers. I did dozens and dozens of pen registers when I was a criminal investigator working narcotics on the sheriff's office 30 years ago. And we didn't have computers back then. Computers would just come in. And back then, now it's all computerized. We had index cards, we had stuff on walls, doing graphs and stuff, getting cell phones and then putting in requests, subpoenas to the phone company. Today, it's very easy. It's very simple. everything is done automatically for you, but it's a very complex investigation when you're talking pen registers, trap and trace, going to different businesses and residences, looking for surveillance cameras, and then viewing the surveillance cameras, and looking for the DNA, doing the trash runs, as we used to call them, picking up the trash. This is to me, and we'll see what happens in the future, but this is a textbook way to conduct a criminal investigation, especially in a homicide. And this was four people were murdered. Four people were brutally murdered by this psychopath, this piece of garbage. Alleged piece of garbage. Okay, but thumbs up to the chief of Moscow, Idaho State Police, FBI, all the agencies from the different states, Pennsylvania, that were involved in this, and the arrest of Kohlberger. Everybody kept their mouth shut, and that is the way it's supposed to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to shut this down. It's 56 minutes, and my throat's going. I don't know why. Voice goes sometimes when I talk too much. Much more coming out on future episodes. Like I said, the Truth and Consequences podcast with Doug Poppa. The name of my channel right now, the YouTube channel, it was changed to the Doug Poppa podcast. That's what it's called. Everything else remains the same except for my new contact information. A lot of people, you send me messages and things like that. Now the new email, the old one's still there, but for a little while until I shut it down. Doug Poppa podcast. You see it going across the bottom of the screen on the ticker. At gmail.com. Doug Poppa podcast at gmail.com. If you want to help me out with investigative and databases and records, sometimes when I have to get them, it all costs money and comes out of my pocket. It's paypal.me/Doug Poppa. Thanks for listening, and much more coming out. Like I said, updates to different episodes that I did last year, especially on this, which to me is just a disgrace, and I haven't seen anybody report it, even national yet. I know there's some interested in, but the local media has done nothing on this 74-year-old woman who was murdered while police officers allegedly were stacked at the door wanting to go in as they heard her screams as she was being brutally stabbed, and were told to stand down by their sergeant. That is in episode 132. I'll have the link in this podcast description to that. Thank you very much for listening. Remember, audio podcast of these YouTube video casts are on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Podcast, and a bunch of other stuff. Thanks for listening. You all have a good evening, and we'll see you on the next go-round, next episode. Thank you.
This lawman sacrificed his badge for justice.
Poppa knew a secret that could free a man wrongfully imprisoned for shooting his ex-wife. But when Poppa stepped forward, he was cut down by his own police department.
All this stuff's going in my head. Should I call up to the defense attorney? Okay? And I knew if I did that, holy hell would break loose.
Deputy Sheriff Doug Poppa used to be one of the top cops in rural Loudoun County, Virginia. Deputy Poppa feels he's been busted himself. He lost his job as a narcotics investigator, he says, when he told an ugly truth about a 4-year-old crime. The truth about how his own department and the local prosecutor allegedly ignored key evidence and may have sent an innocent man to jail.
I testified, and everything changes.
What Deputy Poppa testified about was an attempted murder in 1987.
They deliberately withheld evidence that should have been given to my defense attorneys.
Bill Birch is the prosecutor Deputy Poppa accused of ignoring the evidence.
He says, I told the prosecutor, I told Mr. Birch that this woman said, I'm going to shoot myself if need be, and I'm going to make it look like my husband did it just to ruin his life. Did he say that to you?
No, he did not.
But this November, the court believed Doug Poppa.
Oh my goodness, is this the reception committee?
And on Valentine's Day, William Carter was released on a $50,000 bond and given a new trial.
This man usually puts people on trial in this courthouse, but in a rare turn of events, the Loudoun County Commonwealth Attorney was called to the witness stand. William Birch was asked to respond to allegations that he pressured a witness to lie in earlier court proceedings.
No, sir.
A woman who lived at the Carter mansion the night Carol Vandergrift Carter was shot 5 years ago testified that the prosecutor coached her to withhold testimony about the gun involved.
I certainly did tell him about that it was a .38. I don't recall her saying anything about the gun, a .38 caliber, anything like that.
He's lying to cover his tracks on the last trial.
The high price one cop is paying for telling the truth.
After serving more than 4 years behind bars, Carter was on the edge of his seat when the verdict was read today.
We, the jury, on issues joint, find the defendant William Douglas Carter not guilty.
After he audibly thanked the jury, Douglas Carter could not contain himself. The tears flowed.
When I came out and testified in November of 1991 at the habeas corpus hearing, and again in January, I was suspended for 10 days without pay, and I ended up being fired after 12 years in this department.